All right, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. That way we don't totally run out of time. All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the ability to meet here today in person and via Zoom. Thank you for the ability to continue to serve our community and to make the world a better place. Please continue to be with our servicemen and women as they continue to fight for our freedom. Thank you for the rights and privileges we enjoy as Americans. Please be with our students and our teachers as they continue to work through all of the different changes that this year has brought. Please help them to learn, to grow, and to continue the work that we do to make our world a better place. In your heavenly name, amen. Amen. All right. We did talk to them about turning down the music, so hopefully they'll be able to get to that soon. Unfortunately, she's the only person at the moment, and we're working very, very hard to try to get everybody happy. So we'll get through it as soon as possible. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to you so that you hopefully have as much time as possible.
Sure.
We have the privilege of having Greg with us today. So.
Been called much worse. So.
Oh.
All right. Well, I wanted to, when Jennifer asked me to speak, I think she's the one that reached out. I said, well, what do you want me to speak on? Is there any issues you want me to cover? And I would assume that you probably want a Q&A with me just about maybe different things. But I'll just do some overview for you. So obviously we've been in a pandemic. I don't know if you've heard about COVID-19 or not, but it did some disrupting. But you know, I'm proud of the fact that we've been in school 5 days a week from the very beginning of school. And so we've served over 14,000 students in live instruction. We offered a remote platform at the same time because I was seeing some, you know, late spring, early summer, we didn't plan on running a remote. We planned on running live. We knew we'd probably have to support some students, and then the virus took off in Yellowstone County. And as soon as it took off and it increased, you know, exponentially, then there was a lot more interest in, you know, well, what am I going to do? I'm afraid to go to school, and a lot of pressure coming. And then I was watching school districts across the country say, well, we don't think we're going to open, and we're going to do this. And it was really a tumultuous time. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. And so I was accessing, you know, the best minds I could in Yellowstone County. Billings Clinic was outstanding. St. V's was outstanding. And we had worked with Billings Clinic on the graduation the year before, because I knew that was going to be a major issue, right? And it's because it's an important time. And sometimes we lose sight of how important it is. But it is. There's closure to that. There's just a lot of emotional things to it. And I reached out and worked with Dr. Koo and kind of a medical team at Billings Clinic. And I said, you know, how in the heck can we pull this off? And it allowed me to build a relationship with the medical professionals, which I trusted. You want me to back up?
Nope, you're good.
Just okay.
Alternating.
Which I trusted, which allowed us to kind of build a framework for starting school. And so we had run some summer programs. I wanted to run some summer programs, and I was nervous as heck about it. But I needed to know if we could do what I was hoping we could do in the fall. So we ran 3 kindergarten jump start programs where we bring students who are going to be kindergartners in. We had run one in Orchard before and had great success with it. I'll touch on some of why we're doing that. And then we opened it up to Ponderosa, and we opened it up to Newman. And the parents, I applaud the parents because they had the courage to say, well, yeah, we'll let our students go. And then we ran a middle school program at Riverside, which was educational. And then we have our standard summer school, high school, which these are students who probably failed the class and they need to make up some credit to graduate. And so I felt we had little short kids, we had medium-sized kids, and we had really tall kids to be able to see if we could mask, distance, do those types of things. And I was nervous about it too, because there was some unknowns with it. But I thought if we're going to try to go back to school in the fall, we have to see if we can actually do this. Well, it's kind of funny. initial reports coming back out of the kindergartners was, I said, are they wearing their masks? And they said, no, not very well. And he said, and the teachers were saying, but the worst part is we can't keep them from touching each other. You know, so, I mean, you kind of chuckle, right? They're 5 years old, but they got better through the summer. And then the middle school students seemed to adapt okay. And then the high school students are at the Lincoln Center. So I periodically go through the classroom and just see, and they're wearing their masks, and they were doing their thing. And when I sat with the disease specialist, Dr. Koo, and, you know, masking was a big part of it. Because I thought, well, the worst case scenario is West High, 2,200 students. And part of the thinking at that time was, well, we'll do a hybrid. You know, there were schools that were going to do hybrid or not go at all. And I said, not in favor of not going at all. I don't know if that's the right decision. I worried about our kids who had social emotional issues. I worried about some of the child abuse stuff that we'd be missing if they weren't in school. You know, those kind of things were playing on the back of my mind. And so when I thought about West High and all the students in, and then the hybrid said, well, we'll bring half the students in 2 days a week and the other half in the other days a week, or we'll bring in Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll be out Thursday. And I thought, we can't control what they do before 8 a.m. and we can't control what they do after 3 p.m. So it didn't make sense to disrupt the entire system when we couldn't control those other variables because they were running together anyway. And or during lunch, right? And so there was a leap of faith in some of this too, you know, and staff were nervous, everybody was nervous, but I applaud this community for, you know, having the courage to do it. And I knew if we could, education it's an industrial model. So it, you know, even though it doesn't like to say this, I mean, lunch is over and everybody gets up every so minutes and they change and they do that thing. And teachers are funny that way. If they like routine, they get used to routine. And I thought if we do anything, we need to try to do as much as we can to establish routine. If Mrs. Jones can go in the same door she's always gone in, and she can get her mail at the same time she's always got her mail in the same room, and it's relatively close to what she's doing, as long as the virus will settle, she'll settle. And that's kind of what happened. First week of school, everybody was walking on glass, and then the second week of school was, you know, well, maybe this is going to work. And the third week of school, and then pretty soon fourth and fifth, and then all of a sudden it was, don't close school. Whatever you do, don't close school. And then I was hearing from families, not a lot of them, but enough, that said, I didn't realize as a parent how impacted my children were with being in remote for a long period of time. So there was that piece. And so I think that worked out very well. And then on the remote side, we had students who had significant health issues or family members who had significant health issues, or we had dealing with a lot of anxiety, and that's all real, you know. So being able to put those two platforms together has been, I think, pretty fortuitous. I think the people in remote have done fairly well. I know we had some rough starts with just getting it going. But the overall numbers is roughly 14,100, 200 students have been in live instruction, and about 2,000, we had upwards of 2,500 when we started remote. Right now we're about 2,050. And so that's kind of been the lay of the land. I'll stop there if there are any questions anyone has for me about that framework.
You know, I guess I was a little skeptical on the longer class periods, but I think as it's gone on, it has done wonders for our son, and I think he really enjoys it. Do you see that continue, or is that going to be on a year by year basis, or do you have any insight on maybe how that is going to continue on?
Sure. So I'll reference that. So what we did was we took a 6-period day. That's Billings' model. So 6 hours per day, roughly. And we went to 3 periods per day so that 6 people there weren't 6 changes in one day. And so that doubled the amount of time. So put a 2-hour block in place, which is a long time. And then we, instead of rotating every other day, we rotated every other week so we could keep the cohorts closer together for an extended period of time where we weren't, I think of West High or Skyview High or Senior High. West has the most enrollment. So it wouldn't be mixing 2,200 people every 50 minutes, right? It's taking that, cutting that in half. Well, So interestingly enough, we sent a survey out this year about, do you want to maintain the block? Not every other week, it would be every other day, but it's that 3-period block. And I went up and visited with some students at Skyview, and they said, please keep the block. And so the survey came back, it was kind of interesting. About 60% of the staff in the high school said, we favor looking at a block for next year. And about 57% of the middle school staff said we're not. For most of the parents, and I haven't had a lot of parent feedback, but we sent that survey out. There's definitely interest. So there's a block schedule sitting on my desk that's getting ready to go out here within the next day or so, that we vetted that block with everything that we have to have. We have to be in school minimum 1,080 hours a year for accreditation. We share staff, so the high school has to play with the middle school because our music staff goes back and forth. There's a couple of other staff members. We have some busing issues that aren't big, but we have to start. So we put all that into play, and we put together a 2-hour, 3-period block that'll go back out to the system and see if they want to. I really don't have a dog in that fight. I just told all of our people, I said, you being staff, administration, community, you probably won't get another reset like this. So decide what you want to do. It doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life, but what do you want to do? So that'll go out. We'll take feedback on that. So it's either a 6-period day, which would be normal prior to COVID, or this block. And it would rotate A, B, what they wanted when they designed it. So they is the administration in conversations with the teachers. I just said, I want one block. That's it, just one. And it fits all this criteria. And so it's an A-B hybrid block. So A day is periods 1, 2, and 3. B day is 4, 5, and 6. Wednesday is all 6, so they can touch base with them in the middle of the week. And then 4 is 1, 2, 3, and 5 is 4, 5, 6. And then it just continually rotates all the way through. I think it'll draw some interest. Whether they all decide to do it or not. I'm doing a town hall with the entire Skyview student body next week, Zooming with them. And I'll be interested to hear what they have to say about, a block moving forward. What the administrator said to me was, the building's a lot calmer. There's a lot less anxiety, a lot less issues. Well, there's a lot less transition for one, but the students told me that too. The students at Skyview said it just feels a lot calmer to us. And it's easier to manage 3 periods of coursework per day than 6 in a day. So they like that. But then there's some people that 2 hours a period is a long time. And students and staff have said that to me too.
Well, it seems to be that the block system maybe needs continual refinement based off of what you're saying. Because if we're preparing these kids for college, right, after the grade school, middle school scenario, that high school is a perfect transition to set up a block system like this to prepare them for that college. I remember being in college going, I could set up all my classes on Tuesday and Thursday.
And ski on Friday and
Stink
stuff.
around. that was awesome for me. I mean, that fit me, right?
Yeah.
So preparing these kids at this age, I think they're smart enough to figure that out.
Yeah, I do too. A lot of it comes down to student achievement too.
True.
Are we doing better or not? I mean, 2 hours is a long time to be there unless you're using the time wisely.
True that.
And I'm not, like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight. I really don't care. I just want people to examine it because you're not going to get this opportunity again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also have 2 kids at the Skyview, and they both love it, but they're both in some of these AP or college classes. It gives them more time on that, and then it just so happens that had one really tough class in this block for this week, and then another really tough class on the next week, and it works out great for the homework and everything like that. Because they're really focused on those 3 classes one week and 10 classes next week, and they really love it.
I think overall it appears there's more student interest in it than there is staff, and but it'll be interesting to see when we give them this block, because it won't be every other week. It'll be every other day. I'm curious to see how they accept it. Yeah.
Is that going out to staff then, or?
It'll go. I'll get it to everyone. I'm going to give it to the administrators first and make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be, and then I'll send it out to the community.
Okay.
People can chime in on it, see what they think.
So here's a question for you. In all of this stuff, I mean, you said you don't have a dog in the fight, but is there any pushback in any of the areas? Like whether it's staff or administration that say that blocking isn't good?
Yeah, there's staff that aren't comfortable in a 2-hour block. It seems it's too long. You have to, I think it's either you said or someone, I gave us permission to say, you're not going to hit a home run in the first year of the block. I mean, you have to look at this as 3 to 5 years out before you settle into it, you know, and maybe it is better, but there's no research out there that says that a block outperforms a 55-minute period. I mean, it's really comes down to the effectiveness of the teacher and how well they're teaching in that time period. But the part that I wouldn't let go of that our administrators brought forward, because we talked through this extensively, is I said, to a person, you're all saying that your buildings are calmer and the kids seem to be calm. I said, that's a big deal. That's not a little deal, because we've seen an increase in anxiety and we've seen more suicides. We've seen more suicidal ideation. So they're more amped. They're more amped. And if they're less amped in this whole thing, then I think that counts. I think that counts a lot. I really do. Because that's just social emotional safety, you know, and if the kids are saying it and the administrators are saying it, then it must be happening. And it happened. I don't think they anticipated it was going to happen. Because I know about a month in, I remember talking to some administrators, they go, our building's too calm. There's something wrong. Something's, I mean, seriously, right? Like what's, okay, wait a minute. Yeah.
Don't send us home. Don't send us home.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how
That's
it
an
all turns
interesting
out.
byproduct. You know,
It really is.
It kind of makes you challenge the whole traditional way of education up to this point anyway. And go, is this whole thing obsolete? Do we need to?
Yeah.
Do we need to dig into maybe some psychological aspects that we're not thinking of?
I believe that. That's why I just wouldn't let it go. I just said, listen, I'm hearing this from all of you, and you're not so much as talking. So middle school saying the same thing, high school saying the same thing. They're not talking to each other. So I'm saying there's something here.
That's amazing.
So you said that you started with 2,500 students online, and now it's about 2,050.
2050.
Is that kids coming back to school? Is it dropout rate? Is it combination? Or like,
Well,
I guess statistically, are you seeing a higher
most
dropout
of it's a migration back into live instruction. But if you remember right, what I said was, you know, if you make this decision, please make it for a year. So why was that? Because I said so? No, it was you had to staff both sides. So it cost a little less than $5 million to do this. So you'd say, well, where did that come from? And that's $5 million in addition. So it came from the extra staff that was required to bridge the two programs, because you can't just take a teacher out of live instruction because those 20 students that teacher had moved. It's 2 here, 3 here, 1 here, 4 here. So everyone still had to stay in place. And we hired over 50 teachers to make this happen. We even had teachers teaching in Missoula, Phoenix, I think, Seattle, that were online, that were teaching our students here. So, yeah.
Like the dropout rate, are you on par with the standard year?
Well, we're down 650 students from last year. Over 400 chose to go to homeschool. We need them back, and we want them back. But school districts are predominantly funded by the number of students they have in school. So you probably caught the press, but I gave an extensive update to our trustees yesterday, specific to the deficit in elementary that we're facing. Most of those students are out of elementary. It's interesting. There are some of those students who chose homeschool. So we know 400 plus are homeschool, and the other 200 are just gone. So that would be fairly close to being normal, not overly normal on elementary. But there were some families that chose to keep their students at home because the kids are going to have to wear masks. And then there's a larger percentage of students who chose to stay home because they had a health issue, or someone in the home had a health issue, and they were being advised medically to stay there. And then there were some that were just scared. You know, so $64,000 question. I don't know. I'm hoping our principals are reaching out to our homeschool parents and inviting them back, and you know, SD2 has a lot to offer. So, you know, we're in a marketing game here a little bit too, and there's nothing wrong with that. Part of the problem with public education is it hasn't had to compete, and it isn't all bad when you have to compete. It really isn't.
No, it's normally really well.
Yeah.
I like that you said you hired some teachers in Phoenix and Missoula to get some cross-cultural, it's outside of the box too, which is nice.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting that the remote, I dropped into a kindergarten remote. Well, you can think about a kindergarten remote. It looks like the floor's moving. I mean, you almost get car sick on the screen. I don't know how the teachers were doing it. Pretty soon, the student's upside down and his foot's here. You know, probably the funniest one was, I wasn't on part of this one, but one of our administrators was. And so the teacher's getting ready to teach, and she hears from one of her students, "Did you lift the toilet seat?" And the student says, "Yeah, I did that. Are you sure you lifted it?" "Yes, I did." You know, so in the remote, you're in the home. I mean, you are in the home, right? So that was funny. I had to laugh at that one. We had, I don't have this empirically, but I'd say roughly 30% of the remotes did nothing though. And that's big. That's a big issue. Just
30%.
absolutely nothing. Yeah.
That's what our teacher said last year was, because we kept our kids online doing it every single day and they hated us for it. But they came back this year saying that they were top of their classes and they're doing what they're supposed to. They're like, yeah, we have friends that are teachers, like, yeah, there was a bunch of kids, because they could track their iPads and what they've been doing. They're like, they jump on for the morning meeting and then it's Netflix for 45 hours that day. I mean, it's just
It takes a pretty structured environment remotely to you have to be an independent learner for one. Older students, will handle it better, but you be 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old student, that's hard to do unless someone's at home, assisting. And so that's come with some challenges, and I'm not a big fan of it. It just hasn't gone like we would want it to go for a large enough percentage. Like you said, you have to be, well, I've always felt that probably the most effective classroom is the kitchen table. I mean, I really believe that, because I see students who fail, and a lot of it is they just don't have the level of support that the system was designed for that student to be. So let me back that up. I'm probably, and I shared this before, maybe you've heard this, if you have, just say, sit down. But so I'm pretty critical of the system from a standpoint that I'm critical of its design, and criticizing in a constructive manner, but we do need to change significantly. We are seeing more and more students entering the system that aren't prepared at a level that they need to be successful. And it's not their fault. So, metaphorically, the system works best as they enter school if they're this tall. If they're shorter than that, the system struggles with it, because it's not designed to take 20 kindergartners and have them at 20 different levels. And we're seeing this, and it's becoming more and more. So you can have a student who doesn't know their alphabet yet, and maybe isn't potty trained, sitting next to a student who could be reading at the first grade level. And it makes it extremely challenging. So we're not going to hell in a handbasket, but there needs to be some extension of time. That's why that kinder readiness program is so critical. Just to acclimate them to school, and this is the lunchroom, and this is where you do this, and this is what you do, and it's worked really well. But I think families are busier. I refuse to blame the family, but there is a fragmenting of the family structure. It's just a fact. And until we start to deal with that, I mean, I shared this with our legislators before they went to hell, and then I said, listen, I'm not coming at this from a far left or a far right, but I said, the breakdown in the family structure is impacting a child's ability in the educational system that we have set up for them. And we have to figure some things out. I know you can't legislate family. I know you can't legislate morality. I'm not saying that. But it's not a 5-year-old's fault if they don't have the basics coming in and they're progressively behind. And then we set a system up that says you have 180 days to learn that. And if you don't learn it in 180 days, then there's nothing else. So the easy thing to do is to say, well, I'll blame the family. I'll blame the home, you know. Okay, then what? Right? There's more and more students who are having trouble meeting grade level proficiencies, grade level benchmarks. And so here's the reality. If I leave, and I'm pushing hard on our elementary principals right now, because I'm a big believer in fundamentals. If they can't read and do math, then they probably can't do much. But if they can read and do math, they can just about do anything. So I'm pounding hard on this in the system. Get as many students as you have on grade level in math and reading. I don't, do as much as you can. Because if you leave 5th grade and you're above grade level, you can take an advanced course of study in middle school, which means you can take an advanced course of study in high school, which means that your ACT score is going to be way above what you need to go to school. And even though to go to school, I always say a lot of people go to college, but a lot fewer finish. So prepare yourself to finish. Don't prepare yourself to go. And if you're below grade level in 5th grade, you can't touch it. So you say, well, it's the system's fault. Well, I'm not going to go there. It's just that fundamental piece. 5th grade is extremely important. So that means that K through 4 is critical. And I can't tell families enough that K-5 is critical.
Can you guys do us a favor though? Because I still have one child coming up through the system.
What's that?
So
Not going to blame it on
I'm not the smartest guy in the world,
Yeah.
right? But in college, I was a math major, right? So that was one of the things that I enjoyed. I'm a math nerd, right? But trying to help the girls with their homework in math is next to impossible, right? And so I'm not asking you to change the program that you guys have or the curriculum that you guys have set up, but is there a way to have a parental site, like a website, or maybe even a resource where I can go to figure out how to assist them with their homework the way that it's being taught to those kids? Does that make sense? Because I got to be honest with you, this Common Core math, that's a problem. And it's like, if I understand the principles behind how to get from A to B, I can teach it myself. But I can't teach the kids the way the teacher's trying to teach them and help them figure out how to listen to the teacher when I don't know it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think we can work on that. There's a few websites, but it still doesn't lend itself to the same terminology that's being used in the child's classroom, right? I don't have a good answer for you, but we can work on that for sure.
Yeah.
You have the vote of every parent in the room, just so you know.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. I mean, you think about it, you're like, well, this is how it's done. It's the right answer. I don't know how the heck your teachers teach it, right? I have no clue.
I took-
make any sense.
It doesn't make any
I took a class in college where I had to calculate the torsional vibration of a node 300 feet under the surface with a specific direction of current, and a certain pressure in a specific area of the continental United States, right? And so there's so much math that goes into that.
I wasn't in that class.
Right? That was a difficult
I can't
problem to
imagine.
solve, right? And I got 103% on that final. Okay. This Common Core math is like, oh my God.
And it's apples and oranges and pears.
It's when you have the second grader going, Dad, that's not.
I know.
You're like,
That's like.
it's multiplication. It's 4 times
You gotta
5.
take these boxes and you gotta multiply it. No,
No, you just do the math. So much easier.
Challenge.
What was the advantage of doing that? Changing the math the way it used to be taught.
Well, there's a lot of science behind they call it spiraling, on how they teach language and how they teach math. And they introduce a concept and reinforce it, introduce it and reinforce it in a certain manner. And so it spirals through. And that's probably what you're running into. You know what? I don't know. I don't teach math. My wife was a math teacher, and I watched that happen at our kitchen table. I watched my daughter run out of the house and run up the hill screaming to the top of her lungs when she was a junior. No, I'm dead serious.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I had it happen
So,
at my house.
and then my wife turned to me and she said, "Are you going to do something?" And I said, "Well, what the heck do you want me to do? I can't help her. You're in pre-calc. That's way above me." So I saw it in my own home. I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I mean, I don't think we do a very good job of doing that outreach to the home and saying, you know, how can we help with this? I know our teachers are open to that. I mean, if you called them and said, I'm struggling with trying to teach this concept. Can you help me?"
There's a Jerry Maguire thing. Help me help
Help
you.
you. Right. No, there is.
Help
I
you.
don't know
But
Brett
part
very
of-
well, but I think he's kind of a smart guy, it sounds like. But I mean, you know, you're a college educated person, then you put somebody that dropped out because they got pregnant at 16 and have that same situation happen, there's no help that they can be able to provide. So it's kind of trying to balance that too.
Part of it's the parent dynamic though, because we had parents contact us last year when we were all in remote and said, "I'm completely losing relationships with my children. I can't do this. I can't." You know, it was getting to the point where the student had disengaged completely from the parent. And so there's some dynamics that are part of that too, I think. Just learned a lot from this, but I just don't have a good answer for it.
It's nearly impossible to have a system that works for everybody, you know what I mean? Especially if you want to get down into specifics of family dynamics and that.
I just know for a fact though, that if I sat in on classes that your teachers are teaching,
Oh, sure.
I could teach my kids that.
Mhm.
I know I could,
But do you have that time too?
but I don't have that time.
Yeah.
And you know, math is another interesting piece, and I've watched this in my entire career where so you could have math teacher A, math teacher B, math teacher C, math teacher D, and student A will not connect with D, but they'll connect with B.
For sure.
And this, you know, teacher D, according to A, is the worst math teacher that ever walked the face of the earth and should be removed immediately. And you flip, and student C says, teacher math teacher D, and it's more math than any other content area. It's really interesting. So
Yeah, for me, the meaner the math teacher was to the rest of the students,
better.
I was a better student
that right?
for that teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was.
Well,
Okay, guys, sorry. Let's break for lunch, and then if it's okay, we'd love to have you join us for lunch.